Alysia Marie Gray is our guest. She is a senior at East Hall High School. How many Vikings do we have? Do we have any more Vikings? Christy,
We got one.
Daniel, and
Yes.
Ethan. There we go. There we go.
Oh, we got one back there?
Two of them.
Awesome.
Daniel and Ethan are both Vikings.
That's awesome.
We're all about to be Vikings this weekend, though, on Saturday. Ain't that right? At the block party, Valhalla. Okay. Am I supposed to say Valhalla?
Yeah, you can say that.
We shouldn't talk about that either, huh?
I mean, it's Viking heaven, so probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not in church.
It's not biblical.
It's not very biblical.
On that note, let's get to the Bible.
That
you
sounds
know?
good.
Talk to us, Alysia, about your story from an early age. So I know you tell us. You were saved from an early age, but talk about that a little bit.
So I was saved from an early age. I'm going to totally pull the head card. I don't know when, but I know it was sometime when I was little. And I wish I knew. I wish I remembered. But I know I was little, about 5 or 6. And I think the first time that I really saw the fruits of my salvation was probably when I was about 6 years old. And I think back, it's like, wow, God, God chose me for something pretty amazing. But I don't know if anybody, it was a long time ago, but there's a big news case, and it was the Casey Anthony case. And I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that, but basically, she was accused of, murdering her daughter, which I know is kind of grim, and basically burying her in the Everglades of Florida. And so, I was 6 and just hanging out at my grandparents' house, and they're basically Fox News addicts, so it's on all the time. And I was 6, and I just saw it, and I'll never forget instantly. It was as if, it's the most powerful burden I've ever felt from God. And at the moment, I don't think I fully understood the gravity of murder, right? I was 6, I don't really know that. But I'll never forget, and it's my prayer, like, God, I want this perspective back. It was just seeing, I remember her eyes of just seeing somebody in pain, somebody who hate was being spewed at towards, people were condemning her. I don't even know if she was guilty or not. I never followed the case after that, and for weeks, it was just on my heart, and I couldn't get it off. And a lot of people thought I was crazy, like I got sent to counselors and all that fun stuff, but I did, and my grandparents thought they traumatized me, so they never let me watch the news again. But basically, I'll never forget, me and my mom one night were just like, I think God's telling me I just need to write her a letter and just share the gospel. And I think that's my prayer is like, God, give me the eyes. Like, I wish I could remember exactly what I said, but I want to go back to that childlike faith of like, listen, you're in pain. I don't know the lens. I think as we get older, we put so many lenses on, you deserve grace or you don't deserve grace because you've done this or you've done that. And it's like, God, take me back to when it was just somebody's in pain and it's compassion of what Jesus gives us and just sharing the gospel. And so, I hope one day God will show me if she ever got the letter or, I have no clue where she's at right now. But I think that was probably the coolest thing that I got to do when I was little that God, the first time he used me. So
amazing. Sharing awesome. The gospel.
Yeah.
Just laid it out. Well, my favorite, I like that story. Don't get me wrong. It's a great story. But can you tell them about the stuffed animals?
Okay.
Or should we have your mom? Everybody say hey to Janice. She's here. Hey, Janice. She's fantastic. You still have it? So she didn't get it?
No, we sent it.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of that, I remember I asked her, I was like, Mom, I think we should go visit her in prison. So, I don't even remember her.
At 6.
At 6. So, now that I think about it, she was probably scared to death. I want to go meet a child murderer or something, accused of that. So, yeah. Evangelism. But
6 years old.
Yeah, the teddy bear thing. So, I don't remember any of this. But my mom told me that I used to be 5 and just preach to my teddy bears, I guess. So, we'll see.
Billy Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Christine Kane, at 5, preaching to teddy bears.
No.
It's awesome. So you grew up in a good home.
Yeah.
Your parents are great. They've supported you. Have you ever struggled with doubting your faith? You were saved early, grew up in a Christian home. A lot of us kind of have similar stories. I wonder if you could talk about, maybe have you ever struggled with doubting your faith or anything of that sort?
Yeah, I definitely have. I think the summer it was a whole year actually, between 8th and 9th grade, it was just serious doubt. It was like, God, I don't even know, for so long it just been, what I'd been taught, and I never knew anything different. And I really do think I was saved. I believe I had an encounter with God, but I think at that moment it was questioning everything. Like, am I saved? Is Jesus real? Is he, who I should pick out of everything this world is telling me to pick? And what I think what God really showed me is, I know that a lot of people in here, just from talking to them or just knowing stories, struggle with doubt. And I think the biggest thing God showed me is that the doubt isn't unbelief. If we use doubt correctly, that pushes us to God. And I think that's what's so powerful about it, is that when we have, and I was talking to one of my friends today, Leah, and she's telling me we have an interesting professor that we share, but she was saying that as a Christian, you're not a true Christian if you never question your faith. And I was like, I don't know. I don't think I agree with that, because, if God wanted us to be slaves, just mindless, numbingly, he would never have given us free will. He never put Jesus through all that torture. And so I think that's, God calls us to have an educated faith. And so if you're struggling with doubt, for a year, my mom's the best, and she sent me 1 million emails and every book known to man. And I think you need to know what you believe, because there's going to be a time when you're going to have to fight it, or when you're going to have to test it. Yeah. And I didn't realize that, a year and a half later is when I was going to really have to use what God, had been forming my faith, when I was going to need it for the fight of my life. So,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. So you grew up an athlete.
Yeah.
Specifically basketball. Yeah. You were a baller.
I don't know if that far. I was a little slow and couldn't jump, but
you don't have to say that. I'll say it for you.
Okay.
You were a baller. Okay.
Sure.
And everybody say baller on 3. 1, 2, 3. Baller. Okay, sorry. I had to get that out of my system. So concussions were a thing early in your journey, right? So talk a little bit about that and when that started, and how this season that we're in now came about.
Yeah, so I was in 6th grade when I got my first concussion, and actually, a big roll actually fell on my head, and so that's why I got my first one, and I blacked out on that one. And then ever since then, I got about a concussion a year. And, my dad's football coach, it was always suck it up and rub some dirt on it and you'll be fine. It was always, whenever I fell, he'd be so embarrassing, because it'd be like, get up, pansy, and everybody else would be quiet, and, that was me. So I'd be like, all right, I'm going to roll. And then after number 4, that's when the pain just never went away. And that's when it got scary for the first time. Was like, this isn't just another, I'll do my 2 weeks, I'll go through their horrible concussion protocol or whatever, and then I'll be back, and it'll all be the same. And so ever since then, I've actually ended up getting another one. That's a fun story. But
is it a fun story, or?
Oh, it's not a fun story.
Yeah, not a fun.
No, but
it's kind of like the funny bone.
The what? Oh, yeah.
How it's not funny.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying
it's
to get
a dad joke.
Oh, okay.
I
was trying to help you out, Jared, but I didn't know what you were talking about.
I know. You're such a good friend. You were there with me, even though you had no idea what I was. Okay. So 4th concussion was summer of 2 years ago, 2017?
Yeah, that was June 5th, 2017.
And that's when everything
started. And then since then, there's never been a day where I haven't been in horrible pain. And it developed from, the pain now is night and day from what it was. And basically, I was curious the other day, and I was just looking up, top 10 worst conditions, right? And I have 3 or 4 out of them, out of the 10. And I think, I actually do want to read this. It was a letter that I journal a lot, because, I don't want to punch a wall, so I write it down instead. And
I love that. That's so practical, if you ever want to punch a wall, write it down instead.
Yeah, but I don't want to, I'm going to go ahead and, do an advance warning. This isn't the most, it's pretty brutal, the letter I'm about to read, but I don't want to read this so that my pain can, a pity party, or like, oh, she deals with so much. I just want to read it because, to be honest, I'm blown away that, God would give me the strength to get up every single day and deal with something like this. And I'm blown away. My mom tells me all the time in Romans, my grace is sufficient for you. I've never seen that verse like I have in my life. And so I kind of want to read it. This is what I wrote one day. It was, physically, this is as accurate as I can currently explain what it's like to be in pain I'm in every day. First thing in the morning, the alarm blares, and subconsciously dread and anger fills me. My only relief has ended. My chance of feeling no pain is gone. Pain comes rushing in and hits me as soon as I'm semi-aware of what's going on. My first test of the day involves just getting up. I feel so drugged, and the excruciating pain makes it so hard to find the motivation and strength to leave the bed. This is my first test of strength that day, simply letting my feet hit the floor. At this point, I'm fully aware of the agony that's my reality. My head pain rotates and combines to feel like someone's taken a knife and repeatedly stabbing at my brain, and then electrocuting it and sending lightning bolts to my scalp. I feel like somebody's beating my head with a metal bat and pounding my brain like a mallet. My head throbs, stabs, aches, and dulls and sharps. It's like a torturer deciding what angle and what degree to hurt me next. And as I take my first steps, it's painfully aware of just the exhaustion and fatigue that my body feels. I feel like I ran a marathon, pulled an all-nighter, and worked a 12-hour shift as soon as I get out of bed. As my day continues, my neck is so stiff I can barely move it. I'll just excessively pour sweat. I'll have crazy tremors that'll cause me to shake everywhere, and my skin goes from feeling like a literal fire to electrocution to deep bruises to just agony. The smallest out-of-place touch on my skin causes pain. Dizziness will sweep over me, and I'll start to see my world spin, and I'll see double. My eyes ache, and just to focus on people hurts. And I muster every ounce of strength to avoid passing out, because passing out means the hospital, and that only leads to worse. It's so hard to make it through an hour or two without resting or dealing with this pain. It's constant, it's never ending, it doesn't stop. When I smile or when I breathe or when I scream or when I laugh, it's still there. But the one way I feel like I can relate to Jesus on the cross is every breath he took. Pain went up and went out, and that's how I feel, is every breath is like a fresh new stab of pain that hits me. And dealing with the pain doesn't get any easier, and I can only describe it as just as horrible and unpleasant and just torture. So I know that's obviously not the most cheerful thing to read, but I feel like, to me, to look at that and then to look at that website that says I deal with 3 or 4 things that people call the suicide syndrome or people call never recover from. And I think, my God has gotten me to survive to this day. And if I don't have God, I don't think I'd be here. I don't think I'd be sitting right here. And so I just want to encourage you guys I don't know what you walked in with today, but I know that it's heavy, and I know that it hurts. But I want you to know that his grace is sufficient for you, and whether you can't get out of bed physically, or whether you can't get out emotionally, or, maybe you're dealing with death, or I don't know what's going on, but he promises us that his grace is sufficient, and his mercies are new every day, and he's going to get us through this battle. And I love what we just sang, we're going to see the victory, and we've already got the victory, and that's what I love. It's just we just got to walk out into it until we see it, and I can't wait till I see mine, for sure.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for that. That gives us perspective, because we may be going through things, but we don't understand the depth of what you're going through, and that helps us. I just want to read a couple things you sent me to give us a little more perspective. You've seen 300-plus you've had 300-plus doctor's appointments, 20-plus injections or medical procedures, 5 hospital visits, stays, really, 20-plus medications, and there's still no answer and no fix. So that's where you are.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the series, one, is to show you that each of you have a story to tell, right? And we're showing you a brave soul that's stewarding that story. But the other purpose of it is to bring people up here to share, hey, life is still going on, Like, we're not trying to give you a bunch of stories of people that have conquered things and 20 years down the road are living a great life. Like, no, Alicia's still in the middle of the battle right now. And it's so encouraging for me to see you walking through that. And yeah, it is bleak. Yeah, it is incredibly difficult to hear you read those words. But it makes it all the more beautiful to see the hope that you still have. And it doesn't make sense, honestly, to me sometimes when we talk. We'll get to that more later. I want you to, I know this season of pain that you've been in for the last few years has come with other struggles as well. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you'd be willing to kind of share some of the other things that have happened in your life, in your family, and different things during this season as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's a lot. So I think one of the biggest things that I struggle with is probably just the loss. My life now is night and day from what it used to be 2.5 years ago. And I think one of the hard things is just every day it's like a continual loss. It's like I have to say no to something, or I lose something again, or I have to go sleep in my car, in a parking lot, which I do all the time for like 3 hours, or I have to, I plan my days down to the second of when I get my naps in, when I take my medicines, when I do that. And I think within that 2.5 years, my cousin committed suicide. We saw that, and that hit my family pretty hard, I think, on one side. And then my grandma, who I was really, really close with, she got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so it's hard to just watch her deteriorate. And I think the really hard part is one of the only things she remembers about me is that I'm in pain. And I think that's just, which, she's the biggest prayer warrior, and she's the most beautiful thing. But it's definitely hard to be like, that's the one thing that she remembers about me, not taking that on as my identity. And I think just, relationships has been a big one, for sure. I know everybody in here probably knows it, but when you go through something hard, you really see who's there and who's not.
Yeah.
And I think, that's one of the biggest blessings is community that God's given me, but that's also, I think, one of the biggest is losses. It's just how many friends, how many relationships that I valued that, just aren't there anymore.
Yeah. The pain has brought other losses along with it. It hasn't just been, the pain that you're in every single day. It's also the loss of people around you too. You mentioned the website that you looked at where you had the top three of the top 10 things that, and they call it the suicide syndrome. Suicide, I looked up some stats on this. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24. I didn't realize that. That's a study by the CDC. Each day in our nation, there are an average of over 3,069 attempts by young people, grades of 9 through 12, of committing suicide. That's just high schoolers. I know that there are people in here that are struggling with those thoughts as well. When I think back to fall retreat, not everybody was there, but a lot of people raised their hand and kind of saying, hey, I've dealt with this. I'm still dealing with this. I need prayer. I need help for this. I would love it if you would be willing to talk about that and how you've dealt with that in terms of thoughts of suicide.
Yeah. And so, I think it's a big thing. And, unfortunately, I feel like, I wish our church, or churches in general, not our church does a good job, but just talk about it more, because it's a scary thing. And you bring it up to people, and you'll see them shake or be like, oh, let's talk about something else. And I think, obviously I want to be sensitive. I don't want to speak to every situation, because I know that there's a lot of hurt in the room because of suicide. And so I don't want to make blanket statements, but I do want to talk about how God's kind of shown me my personal conviction on where I land on that. And so, I'll be the first one to say that there have been days when I'm like, God, I don't want to deal with this anymore. This is too hard. This pain is just ridiculous. I was in the ocean. I was in front of the ocean the other day, and I was like, God, I just want you to take my body, and I just want you to let me go out to sea, and I just want to be done. And, as gruesome and as grim as that sounds, I think it's a reality for a lot of us in here for many, tons of different reasons, is just like the statistic that he said. And so I think something that that God has shown me is, number one, for my situation, suicide would mean giving up, and that would mean the devil winning. And, the prideful part of me is like, I've gone through way too much to let him have the victory now. Like, there's no way on earth that I'm about to just lay down and be like, not get to see the healing that's coming. And so I think there's that gumption that's like, I think it's, this is awesome, but I can't wait to do this and be like, but then God healed me. And I can't wait to, just to see the celebration that's going to happen. And so, and I think the other big thing is, I think just knowing that, obviously I do get scared sometimes. I know we've had the conversation of like, what if I lose, my will? Like, what happens? And I've heard stories of that, and I think that just kind of goes back to where I'm like, you know what, God, my heart, and that I've made the decision that no matter how bad it gets, I'm gonna survive this. But I think that goes back to, like with anything, is just going back to Proverbs 3:5, in all ways, submit to God and he'll make your path straight. Or Romans 8:28, that he has good for you in the pain. And that, we rely on him, and his mercies are new every morning, and that his strength is coming for us, and his grace is sufficient for us. And so I think that, it's like he doesn't, if I start thinking 40 years down the road, then of course I'm scared to death. But it's like, God, you've gotten me 2.5 years, so I'm just going to plug one day at a time until I see my victory. And I think we can all do that. And it's obviously, it's so like the devil. I was thinking about this earlier. It's so like him to offer us that instant gratification without thoughts of consequence. It's going to happen later. And I think, he's called the father of lies for a reason. Nobody wants to hear, here's a 10-step plan, and then you're going to get your gratification. Everybody wants immediate. And I think, with God showing me, the suicide in my family, I've seen, firsthand how it does devastate people. And I've held my mom in my arms and held her journal where she's like, God, I'm scared to death that this is going to happen to my daughter, and I've seen that. And I think that just adds fight of like, you know what? We're all, we've already got the victory, and so what a shame it would be to waste that and by ending it prematurely. It's like losing a battle when you've already won the war. And so I guess that's kind of my thoughts is like, if my flesh is going to fail, then I've just got to trust that God's going to be there for me and he's going to pick me up. And I'm going to fight another day until I see my victory. So
Strong. Amazing. What's the C.S. Lewis quote? Do you remember it?
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. I love this quote. It's like, when I die, I want all hell to rejoice that I'm out of the fight. And I can't, I really love that one. I think that's awesome. Right. I think that's good.
Uh-huh. The devil ain't going to call you a pansy, girl. That's what I love. Use the word gumption, too. I like that. I ain't heard that in a while. What other lessons has God taught you in this season? What have you been learning?
Well, yeah, a lot. A lot. But I think one of the big ones is, I think with the pain, I've been limited in so much of what I want to do. And I have big dreams, but it's like, if I can't really get out of bed, I can't really go, change the world, I guess. Is, as the world says, change the world, not as what I really think the gospel is. And I think one thing that God has showed me is that a practical way, I think, for all of us is, sometimes when we're sitting in here and somebody's on stage and they're like, you know what, you need to do this, 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 and this to share the gospel with everybody. You need to make disciples of all nations. I mean, that to me is like, oh my gosh, like I'm just trying to pass math. Like, I can't, like, come on.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that God has shown me is that one person, I can celebrate one person. I can encourage one person, and I can love on one person every day. And that in itself is the gospel. Because that's what it is we're going out, Gainesville, Georgia, even though we don't like to think of it, is part of the world. And so if I choose one person, if every one of us pick one person every single day, then we're making a ton of disciples to just pour into and love into people. And I think another thing that God has shown me is just the simplicity of the gospel. Life is complicated, but the gospel is hard, but it's simple. Mm-hmm. And so I think that one thing, my core desire, because of the pain, I think, is to just, more than anything, I want to get to that point in heaven. And I dream about it all the time of where God is just running to me and well done, my good and faithful servant. And I can't wait for that day. But I want to bring as many people as I can with me. And so I think that it's so important is that, the world is going to offer us, now that I'm a senior, it's like, you got to pick your career. You got to pick your, the next 10 years of your life. And I think if we just take it one day at a time, love God and love people and bring as many as you can, I think that's one of the biggest things God taught me.
It's awesome. It's amazing. What do you say to the person that is going through pain, maybe different kind of pain, but to a point where they're they don't believe that there's ever going to be relief? We've talked about this before a lot. And what do you say to them when they ask the question, how can God love me and still allow me to be in this much pain?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I don't really know the answer to that. But, I think that's something that God has really changed in me because, I get the big picture, suffering produces endurance and then, all the church answers and all that stuff. But, what I never got was, God, why can't I just get a second of just relief? Why can't I get 5 minutes or a day or something? And I had this image in my mind for so long of, God is just this torturer, just waiting to just, torture me again and again and again. And I'm like, how can I sing "This is a good, good Father" when he won't even give me a break? And so I think, Jared gets all my crazy hard God questions, and he does great answering them. But I think one thing that I'll never forget what he told me is that the goal isn't relief, it's God's glory. And I think that has completely changed the way I look at things. And do I want to be healed? Oh, yeah, I don't want to deal with this for the rest of my life. But I think if we live our lives for God's glory, I'm going to be healed either on this side of heaven or on the next side of heaven. So I might as well spend this life I have, for God's glory with as much of it as I can, whether that's in the healing or whether that's in the trial. And so, yeah.
All right.
Oh, did you ask me something else?
No, I just don't
forget
know
a
what
lot
to
of
do. I'm
things,
like, I don't know whether to sing or dance or drop the mic for you in that moment.
No.
All right, so you're a senior, you're
Yes.
17, you're valedictorian right now, like top of the class, number one in the class.
Somehow.
Hello. Talk to me about that. Like, what do you, so you've missed a lot of school.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I don't even know how they're letting me graduate, honestly. I miss 50 days a year. I mean, I'm like, I don't ever show up.
But you
I don't ever show up.
Yeah, but you have to do the work from home. You have to, you are grinding. And I know you'll never say this to them, so I'll do it for you. The work that she's putting in to still be at the top of the class is unbelievable. Like, she can't even read without it hurting. You know what I'm saying? And so I just want to highlight that. But I love what you said to me about why you believe God still has you there.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. So I think the biggest reason that I want it so bad is just, well, number one, I like when I think about it, I'm like, I have no clue. It doesn't make sense. I'm at 50 days a year. I have like a 69 in biology right now. I don't even know how it's happening, but I know that that's God's grace is like He's doing it. I think the biggest reason I want to is because I've seen how much brokenness and pains at East Hall, and I want more than anything to stand up in front of my class and be like, listen, I know that life is hard, and this is what I've walked through, but let me tell you that there's good news, and that people are going to give you tons of inspirational speeches and tell you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you that, with God on your side, you can do anything, and you can conquer anything, and that's what you need to get into college, not, will or money or anything like that. So that's what I really want is I just want to stand up there, and I want to share the gospel with my class, and I think that would be pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome.
That'd be pretty awesome.
You only get 10 tickets?
Yeah, I only get 10 tickets, I know. We're having to cut off the family members a little bit. So.
Oh, boy. So I can't get in on that.
Oh, no, Jared, you're in. Don't worry.
I'm in?
You're in.
Can I bring my candle?
Yeah, you can bring a candle.
Okay, cool. I won't bring the candle. If you really invite me, that'd be like
you for real getting invited.
That's what I'm talking about right there.
I already have my guest list.
So we talked a lot about your story. I know we've left a lot out, but
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about where you are now and how it's different, And we've talked about some of the loss and how the pain has affected you. I wonder if you would share really how the pain has changed you and how in the world you still have hope.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, and I mean that's gonna just go back to like God. I don't really know other than that, but I think one of the big things is knowing that, again, like I said, the thing I dream about the most is, and it may not even be like anything like this, but all I can picture is, the story of the parable of the lost son in the Bible, and where the father's just, dropping everything to run to his son, and that's all I can picture is that when I reach heaven, is that's what Jesus is going to do, and I just can't wait to be in his arms and wait to just be like, I don't have any more pain, and this is my home. And so, number one, I think that's where my hope is, and I know that day is going to come, that nobody can take that day away from me. And so doctors can tell me whatever they want, and they can tell me I'm not going to get better and all this stuff, but that ultimately I have that hope. And then I think also is like, I know that whether God heals me or not, he's going to get the glory. And so, I think what I love, that we just sang that song is like what the enemy meant for evil, God used for good. And, that's actually in Genesis where Joseph, he'd been thrown in prison, and he'd been falsely accused and, thrown in a ditch. And obviously that's not how, he thought his life would go. But I think that's where my hope is like, what, he who is in me is greater than he is in the world, always. And so whether I'm healed or whether I'm not, which I want to be healed, don't get me wrong, but God's going to get his glory, and God's going to use me, and no matter how hard the devil tries, he can't stop that, and he's already lost. So I think that's where most of my hope comes from. It's just I know I've got the victory, and I know healing's coming no matter what. So
amazing. You have an incredible boldness too. I've watched that. Like even, I mean, you're preaching at 5, so to.
I'm running my teddy bear, so don't ring it.
Yeah, and Teletubbies and.
Oh yeah, all the fun stuff.
What are the things with the TY on the tag? No, Beanie Babies. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if those existed.
Oh, that didn't exist.
I like to rip Barbie's heads off. I wasn't very much. I wasn't. I wasn't
Okay.
into all that stuff.
You were friends with serial killers, and you like to.
Yeah. I had a thing about murder. So.
You've been bold. That was my point. Sorry, and you're still bold. And I love. I'm always blown away because I see you, and a lot of you have seen Alysia like in here when it's loud and has her earplugs in or sunglasses on and trying to make it through, but she wants to be in here so bad with this community and in the presence of God while we're worshiping and letting that truth wash over her. And one of the nights after we got done, you came to me and you're like, I've got vision for my community. East Hall needs us. We need to go there,
Yeah.
And that was a month or 2 ago now, and now we're doing it.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
This weekend on Saturday. Yeah. You went door to door a little bit.
We did, yeah. I mean, East Hall is, it has a reputation for a reason. I'm just saying it's pretty rough. And, it's majority trailer parks, a lot of poverty, just not a lot of, education. One guy didn't even know there was a high school 2 minutes from his house. And so I think my biggest heart for them is just, I know that Thanksgiving and Christmas is so hard because it's back to back and it's cold. And so I think our heart is we just want the people of East Hall so bad to know that they're loved and that they haven't been forgotten. And I think sometimes East Hall gets that rep of like, it's on the weird end of the county. You got to go some weird place to get there. And I think it's just kind of forgotten sometimes. And I just want these people to know that even though if they feel forgotten or feel lost or feel like, it's hopeless, that there's hope. And that, maybe it's just serving them lunch. I don't even know. I hope people come. But just, I think that's just our vision is we just want to love on people. And hopefully, we're going to have somebody share the gospel. So we'll see what happens.
Amazing. Yeah, and every day you're living. There's 3 words that you say lately that you're living out. And I would love for you to share a little bit about that because I think that's a great battle cry for all of us, or a mantra to live by, I guess, as students, as leaders, as we live.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it love, serve, celebrate?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, obviously not perfect at that. I have some pretty rough days, but I think that God has really given me a vision of like while I'm in the battle, I can build up his army and I can build up the people around me and I can celebrate. It's one thing, I try to go through my contact list or just who can I love on today? Like love, serve, and celebrate. I think that's something that we can do no matter what season you're in and no matter, what resources you have or who you are. It can be as simple as a hug or as simple as a text or anything like that. So I think that if we can just, develop that as a mindset of, I think that's so like Jesus. Everywhere he went, it was love, serve, and celebrate, and then he shared the gospel. And so I think if we could do that, I think that's how we turn the world around, is by doing that. So.
Amazing. Love, serve, celebrate.
Yeah.
I love it. This is what I want to do. I want to pray for Alysia, and because the next step, maybe talk a little bit about the next step. Boston is coming. This is, you talk about it.
Yeah. So basically, all the doctors have, they don't know anymore, and so kind of one of our last, treatment options is this big therapy clinic up in Boston, and so that's going to involve moving up there for 5 weeks, and just doing intensive therapy, and just. The hope is that it's going to get me a little bit better or just somewhat better. And, obviously I'm pretty scared. It's Boston. It's freezing. School and work and all that stuff we're having to put on hold, and finances. It's a ton of logistics. And so I think, it's a big step. And I kind of feel like, a little bit like, Abraham, or not Abraham, it was somebody went, and he's like, maybe it was, but Isaac on the altar. Like, It's like, God, that's a little too much. Like, I don't know if I want to do Boston too. Everything else just affects me, but this affects a ton of people. And so we're going to take that step, and I'm really praying that it's going to come back, and I'm not going to be in pain. That'll be pretty cool. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
It would. Well, we're going to pray for that.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to love and support Alysia as she's on this journey. After I get done praying, we're going to split up into groups. So hang tight with me when I finish. I'm going to kind of give you some instructions because I want you to have a few minutes to talk with your people. But if you're comfortable extending a hand to Alysia as we pray right here, we're not going to all gather around her, but I do want to kind of join in. And God knows, even if you're not comfortable extending a hand and you want to be a pansy, that's fine. We're gonna pray here together.
Hold on, can I say one more thing, Jared?
Yeah.
And so I think the last thing I want to say is to you guys. I don't think you guys fully understand the power of community and how amazing that is. And when I lost all my friends, it was kind of like sitting on the couch every night. And it was like, God, I need people to surround me, and you guys have, and I have more people in my life. Cherie and Lizzie and you, Jared, and so many countless mentors in here. I can't, name them all. I'm missing people, but my girls in my small group, I can't tell you guys the encouragement that you guys give me. When I'm down, when I'm in pain, it's just the arms of lifting me up, of being like, you know what, I feel like, I'm the guy on the mat, and you're climbing up to the top of the roof and just lowering me down to Jesus. And so I just want to say thank you to you guys, because it really is home when I walk in here. It's like, it's Sunday, it's Wednesday and Sunday. It's like, this is how I recharge my batteries. It's like, I got to get going with church. So I love you guys. So thank you. So yeah, we can pray now.
That's awesome. We love you too, Alysia.
Thanks, Jared.
Let's pray together. Father, God in heaven, we come to you humbled that you call us and you give us stories to steward, to carry, and that you still use us, God. That you have a plan that is still to prosper. That your word says that you have not forgotten us. That you're with us in the fire and the flood. That you're a faithful God. That you're a loving, good Father who cares so much about his children. And so, God, I pray right now for your faithful hand to be on Alysia. For your healing hand to be on Alysia. For your wise hand to be on the doctors that are going to be touching her and helping her and looking into what's going on with her. God, I pray that you give them wisdom and guidance and discernment. God, and I pray for something that they can't explain. I pray for this story to end in so much confusion because it could only come from you. And that you would get all the glory. God, we know that you're going to get the glory anyway. God, we know that hell, the devil, his army has no power here. That you have no hold on this girl. That you do. The devil doesn't have any hold on this girl. That you have every hold. That you have every enemy coming against her at bay. God, and I pray by the power of the Holy Spirit that you would continue to give her the faith to believe that you are not done with her yet, that you are just getting started with her story, and that there's people all over this community and all over the world that need to be touched by you through her. And so continue to give her the strength. God, continue to give her the faith that whatever may come, she knows that you are in control and that you have her as a good and loving, faithful Father, sovereign over all. We praise you and we believe that you're still in control, and we believe that the best is yet to come. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Can we give it up and say thank you to Alysia? All right. Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Thanks, guys.
It's awesome.